I were to ask you to imagine something along the lines of a war room, if you've seen anything along that as far as military goes or anything like that, you have a situation where there might be some situation taking place, and there's general and all sorts of military people in that war room, and also some information they're looking at, trying to decide what they're going to do or plan to attack or something like that. Now, imagine that in that war room, that instead of military and that makes them a little more concerning, like Satan and his angels. Not only that, maybe more concerning is that pictures up on the wall and all the information there is our information. And what they're doing is they're looking at us, trying to figure out how they're going to attack us. Things like that take place. Now, obviously, not talking about in the spirit realm. They have a war room and everything, but I think you understand what I'm talking about is that they're planning to attack against God's people. They're doing things that He doesn't like. People that are serving God, people that are worshiping God, trying to do what's right. Satan and his angels have a plan to attack to try and cause us to not do that.
To make us get off track in this heaven. It's been said, not by me, but I've heard it before, and it's a good saying, one that we need to remember. In order to lose our souls, we don't have to worship Satan. He just has to get us not to worship God in the way that God commands and God wants. We don't have to pledge allegiance to Satan in order not to be pleasing to God or in order to lose our souls. So this morning, for a few minutes, I want to look at a couple of methods I think that Satan will use on us, and some things that he might do, and things like that. And so I've entitled the sermon, "What Would Satan Do?" Now, after I got to looking at it, probably it's in the current form is Satan still coming after us. Probably should be more what will Satan do on that. 2 Corinthians chapter 2. Verse 11, the good news about this is that God hasn't left us in the dark about what Satan will do. All right, He's given us some idea. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11, where Paul's writing there, and I won't go to the previous verses. Verse 11 says, we're talking to the church there, lest Satan should take advantage of us, for we're not ignorant of his devices. That tells us two things. One is that Satan has devices that he uses. We're going to talk about a couple of those this morning. I won't be an exhaustive list, as you probably add some more. But also it says that we shouldn't be ignorant of how Satan is going to work. We can understand tendencies and things like that of how Satan is going to attack. In the sports world, football teams, sports teams, when they, especially nowadays, when they get ready to play a game the previous week, they've studied film. They've studied their opponent to look at tendencies, to what they do in certain situations, so how they can either defend that or how they can attack an opponent, something like that. Well, the good news is God has helped us. God has helped us with that. So this morning, for just a few minutes, I want to look at what would Satan do in certain situations. What will Satan do in certain situations? Before we get into that, I just wanted to welcome everyone here to River Ridge. Certainly good to see our members and some visitors as well. It's good to see you. Chuck and Debbie are out of town. They'll be back this coming week at some point. So the regular preacher here does a much better job than me. But certainly we're glad to have you. Glad to see everyone here. But let's open our Bibles and look this morning for just a few minutes about what would Satan do. Now, before we get into that, we need to understand that this is real. What we're talking about. Very well could be that Satan is amongst us this morning. Just because we're in this building, with four walls, doesn't necessarily keep Satan out. Right now, we're together as a church as far as the people go. Right, so we have some we can have some comfort that we're together. But Satan could be in here trying to distract us now. If we lost our focus during the singing, during the Lord's Supper when Tony was up here. During the Bible class this morning, something like that. And we'll look at a couple of things as well. let's just be mindful of a couple of these verses. 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil walks about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Satan is active. He's walking around praying, looking for his prey about what he's going to do. Very next verse. Remember in Job, we're going to look a little bit more at this here in just a moment. Remember in Job 1 verse 7, and the Lord said to Satan, from where do you come? And Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking back and forth on it. We're going to look a little bit more about Job here as well. So Satan is going back and forth looking for targets and looking for people. In 1 Peter 5:8 says, for people whom you may devour. It's pretty serious language there that we can understand. Even Luke 22, and the Lord said to Simon, Peter, Simon, Simon, indeed Satan has asked for you, that he may sift you as wheat. Satan went before God and asked for Job. He also went before God and asked for Peter as well. So we can see a few things here that he's active, and so we know that he's actively seeking for us. Now, what are we going to do with that? Sorry, and when I was looking at mine, that I know it's a little bit high up there, but it kind of runs into it. Hopefully, we don't have any more issues with the font here. But what will Satan do to us? What are some things he's going to use? Well, I would say that he's going to use discouragement for us. How so? How is he going to use discouragement? Well, we just talked about Job, and so look in Job chapter 1, and we'll read these 9 verses, and these are certainly probably common knowledge to us as what happened, but just to get an idea of this. Job chapter 1, verse 13. Now there was a day when the sons and daughters, talking about Job, when the sons and daughters were eating and drinking in the oldest brother's house, and the messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing, the donkeys were feeding beside them, when the Sabeans raided them and took them away. Indeed they have killed the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was still speaking, another also came, and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was still speaking, another also came and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 bands, have raided the camels and took them away, yes, and killed the servants to the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was still speaking, another also came and said, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in the oldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind came from across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on them, and they are dead, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Then Job arose and tore his robe and shaved his head and fell to the ground and worshipped. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, naked shall I return there. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job did not sin, nor charge God with wrong. I know that's a little bit lengthy there, but we can see a couple things here. One, we know in the previous verses, I want to read all of Job chapter 1, but we know in previous verses that Job presented himself to God, and he asked for Job, or I said Job, the devil, Satan presented himself to God and asked for Job. And so we know a couple things. One is that God puts some constraints on what Satan can do, and so that certainly benefits us, and it should comfort us. But one of the things to keep in mind is that the constraints that God puts upon Satan goes to the full limits of what he can do to try and get us to discourage us. Can you imagine losing everything? Sometimes we talk about, the stock market has a down day, and some people that are into all that say, oh man, I've lost everything. I've lost, and sometimes we say that and we don't really mean it. Job lost just about everything, right? He lost lost his materialism, right? Lost his livelihood, and then not only that, lost his family, right? He lost all his children, lost 10 children, lost his livelihood, and lost his children, all in the span of just this short time here. Job lost everything. Satan was behind that. It's interesting that God never tells Job exactly why this happened. And again, for all Job knows, he was just doing what was right. God never tells him, exactly what's going on. And so we need to remember that as well. When things happen, when we're doing what we're supposed to, and bad things happen, let's keep in mind who's behind it. Satan is behind that. And we don't know what goes on in the spiritual world exactly, but we can have some idea about the order of it. God is in control, and He has put some constraints on Satan. But Satan's going to take those, take what he can do, and take it to the full. So, can you imagine being so angry at someone, or wanting to take someone down so bad that first of all, let's say you take away their livelihood, wherever the job is, you get them fired, and then let's say you clean out the bank account. All right, so all that stuff. And then you come back and you say, you know what, that's not enough. I want their children killed. So I'm taking away their livelihood, I'm taking away their job, taking away their money, and now I want their family killed. And that's hard for me to believe that I would dislike someone that much, in order to do that. But Satan said, you know what, that's what I'm going to do because I'm allowed to do it. Why was he doing it? He's trying to discourage us, right? We've known people that have lost material, they've lost everything materially, that struggle, that have fallen away. Is there anything, is there any material amount that would cause us to stop serving God? If there is, then Satan is working with his discouragement toward it. But you know what? Satan doesn't stop there with Job. Job chapter 2, 4 and verse 9. Satan comes back to God and says, I want more. So Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin. Yes, all that man has, he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to his face. Satan talking to God about Job. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful bores from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took for himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. Right there, Satan got what he wanted. He got Job's wife so discouraged that she wanted to quit. And that's what he was going for. It took a lot, right? It took a lot. He took away everything that they had materially. He took away every single one of their children and had them killed. And then he strikes Job with his health. And then finally, Satan gets what he wants. Here, Job's wife finally gets in and says, this is crazy. You should curse God and die. Now, at the same time, it won't be too hard on Job's wife. Was she wrong here? Yes, absolutely she was. But you know what? There's been people in grief-stricken situations, much less than what she was going through, say some things that they shouldn't have. Now, certainly she was wrong, but at the same time, she was going through a lot. We know if we go to the end of Job, we know what happens there. Job stays faithful to God. He goes through some obviously some things where he has to get some things right there. But at the very end, you know what happens. He gets everything given back to him. As well, and then apparently his wife is still there with him. But at the end here, at least right at this point, Satan has gotten what he wants. Job's wife is so discouraged, she says, curse God and die. And that's what Satan is looking for you and I. Material things, I don't know, that may affect you, may affect me. One of the things that Satan knows is that different things affect each of us. What might be tempting to you might not be tempting to me, and vice versa. And Satan knows that, and that's what he's going to use. And so here with Job, he used every single thing. He used materialism, family, and then finally went after himself. And we've known situations, unfortunately, maybe in our own lives, to where maybe one of those things, has affected us. Maybe it's caused us to question things. Maybe it's caused us to fall away for a short time, or longer, or something like that. That's exactly what Satan is trying to do. He's trying to discourage us in order to do that. Is there any amount of material loss that would make us leave God? Would we be so discouraged at any amount of material loss? Our house, our job, money, whatever it is. What about our health? A lot of us have health issues, that we deal with from time to time. Satan uses those, tremendously to try and get us discouraged about serving God and why we're going through things like that. Unfortunately, we've all known of members of the church who've maybe fallen away for one reason or another because they've become discouraged in certain in certain situations. So, so with that being said, the first point, what will Satan do? He's going to use discouragement in order to try and get us not to serve God as we should. What about the next one? What about distraction? If this doesn't describe America perfectly, I don't know what does. Maybe I'm along the lines of it as well, especially during football season. It's hard to for those of us that like football. People get distracted on Saturday afternoons and Monday nights and Sunday afternoons and things like that. But just in general, talking about distraction, what was it's off the top of my head, but they talk about now that people's attention spans are the shortest that they've ever been. And they came out with one, and I forgot, it compared our attention span. There's some animal out there that has a longer, I have no idea how you measure the attention span of an animal, but anyway, apparently our attention spans are shorter than some animals in the animal world. But distraction is something that Satan is going to use for it. 2 Timothy 2:4 says, "No one engaged in warfare entangles himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who enlisted him as a soldier." This is talking about soldiers, in general. Paul's talking here to Timothy, but it's about if you engage in warfare, you've got to be focused on what you're doing. You don't want a soldier that's constantly looking back, that is entangled in other things while he's trying to fight, trying to do the things that he needs to do to get the mission accomplished. He needs to be focused on that particular mission. We put that in a spiritual sense. Us as Christians, our mission is to get better. Our mission is to do those things, and we get entangled too much in this life, then that's going to affect that. Satan uses that. Luke chapter 8, verse 14 said, "Now the ones that fell," it's talking about the parable of the sower, remember this. "Now the ones that fell among the thorns are those who, when they heard, go out and are choked with cares and riches and pleasures of life, and bring no fruit to maturity." There's nothing inherently wrong with the cares of this life or the riches of this life, or really the pleasures of this life. Nothing wrong with those things. But when they become a distraction, to us, when we let that interfere with serving God, with doing the things that we need to do and serving God, encompassing everything else. When we serve God, part of that is serving each other, right? And part of that is reading, studying, praying. When these things right here, the cares and riches and pleasures of this life, interrupt or interfere with that, then we become distracted. Satan has certainly done a good job with that. 2 Timothy 2, 2 Timothy chapter 3, 2-4. "The men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, loud, blasphemers." He goes through all that, and at the very end, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. On the way here this morning, not just this morning, but most mornings, we probably pass people on the way to the golf course, on the way to with the fishing boat, behind the car, the truck, or whatever it is, going other places. Obviously going other places. Nothing wrong with playing golf, or going fishing, or whatever it is. But when that interferes with serving God, then we become distracted to that. So lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. Satan has come in, and he will use these types of things to get us distracted from what our goal is. It's not enough. It's not enough to like God. We need to love God. We can say, "Oh, I like that," and that means we have a general favorable attitude towards something. But nothing in the Scripture says we're going to be pleasing to God that we just have some general favorable attitude. "Oh yeah, I know that. I kind of like Him." We have to serve God with all our heart and all our soul and all our mind, and that certainly indicates we need to be focused on Him and on heaven. And so when we're focused on that, then it helps us to not get distracted. But Satan does everything he can to get us distracted. All right, so we looked at discouragement and distraction. Third point is Satan will use deception, and this one is pretty straightforward. You have to remember that Satan does a good job. This would say he does a good job. We're just admitting that he's skilled at what he does. All right. He's gotten us to believe that, or a large majority of people, that when bad things happen, it's God's fault. You know, when we've all heard, maybe we've been tempted time to time when bad things happen to us. You know, why is God doing this? Well, let's remember that it's Satan that is behind that. But he's done a good job of getting us deceived to think otherwise. James 1:13, let no one say when he is tempted, I'm tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Then when desire is conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's full grown, brings forth death. Do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. And Chuck brought up this point before. When you tell someone don't be deceived, what does that indicate? That there's a danger of being deceived, right? You wouldn't give the warning not to be deceived by something if there wasn't that danger of that happening. Don't be deceived. All right. God is we're doing what we're supposed to do, trying to serve God. He is on our side. All right. Because bad things happen, and sometimes doesn't mean God doesn't care about it. You know, we have faith. Well, we should have faith. I'll say that. We should have faith. And from time to time, our faith is going to be tested. And it may be tested severely, like Job, or maybe you've known people in this life who've gone through similar circumstances like that. And you say, why would God do that? Well, you have to figure that, you know, untested faith is really no faith at all. You know, how are we supposed to know when, you know, and how is God supposed to know what our faith is if it's never tested? You know, we do that in the business world from time to time, especially IT or computers or things like that. You know, they'll build something, and then before they either put it out on the market or before they get it to running in the business, they'll test it to make sure that it runs, that it does what it's supposed to before they put it out. So it's run through the test, much the same way, similar to how our faith is, you know, with God. Our faith is going to be tested from time to time. How are we going to hold up? God allows that to happen, all right, but it doesn't mean that he's behind it. He allows it to happen. But remember, God's restraints on what Satan can do for us. We talked about deception. This is pretty straightforward on Satan. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. I know that Halloween's coming up here in about a month and everything, and from time to time you'll see people dressed up in like these little devil outfits, you know, that have the horns and tail and you know, the pitchfork and stuff like that. And again, I'm not making condemning that or anything at all. Just trying to make the point that there's nothing cute about Satan. All right, nothing cute at all. All right, he's done a good job of getting us to try and accept certain things. You know, things aren't as bad. Sin's not all that bad. Things like that. There's nothing cute about Satan at all. Here in John 8, Jesus said he was a murderer from the beginning, but he's a liar and the father of lies. Pretty strong. I mean, someone said that about you or I, that we were a murderer from the beginning, that we're a liar and the father of lies. It's pretty strong condemnation of the type of person that you are, and that's what Satan is. No better example than all the way back at the beginning of the scripture, Genesis chapter 2. Remember, way back in the Garden of Eden, and the Lord, chapter 2. That's where God's giving the command to Adam and Eve. And the Lord God commanded them, saying, of every tree in the garden you shall eat freely, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in that day you eat of it, you shall surely die. The very next chapter, in Genesis chapter 3, Satan comes to Eve, and Eve tells him, we can't eat of that. We can't eat of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, because when we eat of it, we will die. And what is Satan's response? When someone said to the woman, "You won't die," you won't get a better example of a lie than that right there. That's sometimes people quote unquote tell little white lies, and there's that saying out there that all lies are 60% truth, or something like that. It's 100%. And 100% lie, you will not surely die. Satan knew what he was doing, and he affected Eve with that by deceiving her, by saying, getting into her head and saying, you know what, I know that God said this, but I'm telling you this. And it's really no different. Really no different today. Unfortunately, we understand that sin is obviously displeasing to God, but it's also damaging. We talked a little bit about our reputation this morning. It can damage our reputation severely and also damage everything else, damage relationships severely. Most importantly, it can damage our spiritual relationship with God and keep us out of heaven, which is the most important thing. But deceiving, Satan does a good job of deceiving us into thinking that sin is better than what we have now. Always thinking that the grass is greener on the other side. We see that unfortunately, in marriages. Many times you'll see a partner in marriage, a husband or a wife, leave thinking that things are going to be better. If they get out of that marriage and then go to have an affair or leave their family. Satan's the master of knowing what works best against each of us. I mentioned before, what works best against me might not work best against you, or vice versa. But Satan knows. My dad was an excellent fisherman. He was really good, and he had one bait that he used the entire time. The entire time that he fished, I never knew him to use any other type of fishing lure. In fact, I've got some with mine, but he used that kind because it was so effective. It was so effective for the type of fish that he was fishing for, but he never fished for really anything other than bass. But he told me when he was younger, he used to fish for like crappie and other things like that. And you know what? He used a different type of bait in order to get those. And so depending on what he was fishing for, he changed up his method, he changed up his lure, he changed up his bait for that. Now, talk about something much more serious than fishing is that Satan does the same thing with us. Depending on what Satan's fishing for, what he's trying to get us to do, what he's trying to affect us with, he's going to change things up. And so it's up to us to know, it's up to us to be aware, it's up to us to, as mentioned in the scriptures about putting on the whole armor of God so that we can understand and that we can be ready for what is coming our way. All right, so we've looked at 3: discouragement, distraction, and deception, and then we'll look at one more here as we tie in as we line the lesson up. I think Satan is going to cause us to delay doing what is right. And when we do this, obviously we refer to procrastination. Sometimes we make light of procrastination, especially guys, things around the house that maybe need to be done or something like that, or things at work or something that needs to be done. We don't particularly want to do them, so we procrastinate and we put them off. Now, if you think about things that Satan can do to us to cause us to delay to do what is right, then that can have disastrous consequences. Whether I do something around the house and really necessarily have a spiritual effect on my wife, maybe, but her anger or something like that. But as far as we're talking about just in general, take a look at this of how Satan can affect certain things by delaying. 1 Thessalonians 2 says that we, brethren, have been taken away from you for a short time in presence, not in heart. This is Paul writing to the church there at Thessalonica. Not in heart, endeavored more eagerly to see your face with great desire. Therefore, we wanted to come to you, even I, Paul, time and again. But Satan hindered us. Satan caused a delay in Paul wanting to come through the church. Paul wanted to be strengthened by going and seeing those brethren, but then also by those brethren there being strengthened by Paul coming. Satan understood that there was something good going on there. Satan did what he could. Paul recognized it and said, I've been taken away from you for a short time. I've been wanting to come to you, but Satan has hindered us in doing that. We can probably look at, I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility to say that we're doing good work here at River Ridge and that Satan is taking notice of it. For the 3 years, Cam, it took to have a gospel meeting here, after the fire. I think that Satan might have hindered things along the way from the fire over in over at Sharon Place to the school until now. Satan doing what he can to put a stop to the gospel being spread. And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to say that Satan understands what's going on here and understands trying to spread the gospel and doing an effective job of spreading the truth in this area. And so he's going to try and hinder us in any way that he can. That's the way that Paul mentioned there. What about another type of delay here? And this is one of the tie-ins to the lesson here. Acts chapter 24, 25 through 27. It's talking about Paul reasoning with Felix. It says, now as he reasoned about righteousness, self-control, and the judgment to come, Felix was afraid and answered, go away for now. When I have a convenient time, I will call for you. And then let's get verse 27. But after 2 years, Festus succeeded Felix, and Felix wanted to do the newspaper let Paul bound. So Felix said, you know what, I'm going to delay until there's a more convenient time. Verse 27 said 2 years went by, and convenient time didn't come during that. Satan was effective in causing a delay there. I don't know if it's ever mentioned, to my knowledge, if Felix ever obeyed the gospel. That can be disastrous. Satan causing a delay in us knowing what is right. So go ahead and get your songbooks out and turn to number 798, the song that Tim has selected there. So we looked at some things here about what Satan has done. As I mentioned earlier, it's not an exhaustive list. So, we could get the things that Satan would and will do be far longer than just these 4 points here. But I think it kind of encapsulates how Satan works. Pay attention to the very last one here. What would Satan do to delay? If you're delaying doing what's right, if you're in the audience now and maybe you haven't obeyed the gospel, but you know that you need to, or maybe you have obeyed the gospel and maybe you've fallen away, maybe you've fallen on hard times, maybe you've become discouraged or distracted, maybe you've been deceived, whatever it is, maybe you've fallen away. But don't let the last one take place, because you don't have to delay any longer. You don't have to let Satan delay that. You can take care of the first 3 if that affected you by not delaying any longer, and regardless of what the circumstance is, or whatever the circumstance is, you need to obey the gospel. If you need to talk more about that, if you need prayers of congregation, whatever it is, please don't delay any longer. You come to the front, probably stand, probably sing.
Yield not to temptation, for yielding is sin. Each victory will help you some other to win. Fight faithfully onward, our passion subdue. Look ever to Jesus, He'll carry you through. Ask the Savior to help you, comfort, strengthen, and keep you. He is willing to aid you. He will carry you through. Shun evil companion, bad language is safe. God's name will in reverence, nor take it in vain. Be thoughtful and earnest, kind-hearted and true. Look ever to Jesus, He'll carry you through. Ask the Savior to help you, comfort, strengthen, and keep you. He is willing to aid you. He will carry you through. To Him that overcometh, God giveth a crown. Through faith we shall conquer, though often cast down. He who is our Savior, our strength will renew. Look ever to Jesus, He'll carry you through. us the Savior to help you, comfort, strengthen, and keep you. He is willing to aid you. He will carry you through. This moment we'll ask, I think it was Matt, to lead us in a closing prayer. I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. We've got the visitors with us. We're glad that you come our way as well, and just welcome you anytime you have a chance to be with us. We'll meet again at 4 o'clock this afternoon, so please come back if you have an opportunity to do so. Remember those who mentioned sick and away, our number. Also remember just to pray for each other, let each other know when you need prayer. That's that's one of the things we need to make sure that brothers and sisters, we let everybody know what our needs are, so we can pray for each other. That's one of the things we do as a Christian family. So let's remember that. Then are there other announcements that we need to make before we dismiss? Okay, not Matt, will you lead us in a closing word of prayer?
Lord, we come before you now to close this service. Thank you for the time that we've been able to come together and come to you in prayer and sing songs of praise. We pray that we have listened attentively today, open up our hearts and our minds, Lord, and examine ourselves. We'll leave here feeling fresh and prepared to go out to the world and put an example as you would have us to live. We thank you for men like Mike that are willing to fill in and to ask you stuff, willing to get up before us and present lessons in your word, Lord, and take something from and examine ourselves, that we can strive to be better Christians. We ask you to please get all those that are traveling and watch over them, protect them, and keep them safe, Lord. Be with all those that are sick and those that are struggling with earthly problems and physical ailments, Lord, cancer, surgeries, and those types of things. Pray that you will watch over them and that you will heal them and they can be back to their own health. We ask you to please go with us as we leave here, help protect us from the state and bring us back to
Thank you.